I'm going to talk about the relationship between anthropological museums, scientific discourses, and photography. And to do so, I'm going to focus on the Human Races Gallery, inaugurated in 1938 in Paris in the major French anthropological museum, le Musée de l'Homme, the Museum of Man. And I'm going to try to demonstrate that in spite of the gallery's purpose, which was to deliver a progressive and even anti-racist discourse on human races, the museography, and more precisely the photographs, tend to disrupt and contradict this goal. First, I'm going to explain the Gallerist Project and to show you, thanks to photographs taken at the time, what it looked like. Then we will see that the gallery follows previous projects conceived as the National Museum of Natural History in Paris from the 19th century. And lastly, by focusing on museographic aspects, I'm going to explain what was ambiguous and even problematic in the way to use photography in the gallery for the gallery's purpose. The Human Races Gallery, which was also called the Anthropological Gallery or the Gallery of Fossil and Current Men, was opened in 1938 at the new Museum of Man in Paris, inaugurated the same year. It was an important gallery because it was the first stage proposed to the visitor and thus was working as an introduction for the following ethnographic rooms. The gallery extended on 2 rooms with more than 40 showcases, and I show you one of the first plan of the gallery with fewer showcases than they will be in the end on the left, and on the right a photograph where behind the skeleton we can guess the layout of one room. The gallery was structured in 3 different steps. I'm going to resume them and to show you some views. First, about 15 showcases were dedicated to the criteria to differentiate human races and to practice the comparative anatomy. This includes color skin, body proportion, face, nose, and mainly skulls and skeleton. Then the races are presented according to chronological order, and it begins by the fossil ones. 10 showcases explain the Neanderthal stage, and then the 3 following branches composing the Homo sapiens coming from one single species. And finally, the last section exhibited the current races, and I'm going to focus on this section. A general panel introduces this part. It mentions the main categories, which are, with big quotation marks, pygmies, black, yellow, and white. The variations are then declined in this order through 50 showcases. And thus racial subcategories appear. The Tasmanian race, Melanesian, Dravidian, Vedian, Australian, Ethiopian, Eskimo, Indonesian, Polynesian, Amerindian, and also Mongol, Siberian, Turanian, Alpine, for what we know. For each current race, the gallery presented together a mapping showing the geographical area of the race, a presentation text, 3 skulls, front, side, and back, and a series of large photographs, usually 3 in number, systematically showing human beings, both men and women, and sometimes small groups, and sometimes photographs taken on the spot, but more generally, pose portraits. The staging of the gallery, in line with the spirit of the new Museum of Man, seeks to be modern, didactic, and attractive one in order to respond to a scientific purpose and to give shape to a political statement. The gallery was set up by the sub-director of the museum, the anthropologist Paul Lester, and responded to the will of Paul Rivet, the head of the museum, who has been a predominant role in the French modern anthropology. On the one hand, for Paul Rivet, ethnology, which oversees the other human sciences, has to be based on, I quote, a solidarity between physical anthropology, ethnography, and linguistic. It echoes with what Agnese was saying just before, end quote. So, and it is because of the scientific program, of this scientific program, that one of the ethnologist's tasks is to establish, I quote, the diagnostic of human races difference and of their distribution among the diverse population groups, end quote. And the creation of the Human Races Gallery goes towards this goal this global scientific purpose. On the other hand, Rivet is also aware of the excesses to which the notion of race has given and still give rise at the time. It seems to me that the duty of ethnology is to take charge of it and to surround it with another discourse. Rivet defends the idea that there are no pure races. He is close to Franz Boas' conception. He takes a clear stand against polygynist discourse and against the hierarchization of races, which have revived in Europe at the time, enhanced by the rise of fascism. Alice Conklin, who studied the history of the Museum of Men at this time, speaks of an affirmation of an anti-racist racial science, which comes through several publications and also through the Human Races Gallery. Nevertheless, by many aspects, this gallery is inherited from what was already done at the National Museum of Natural History and the Anthropological Laboratory, more specifically, since the end of the 19th century. Its great innovation is above all museographic in scope. The National Museum of Natural History already exhibits an anthropological gallery. The project finds its roots in the middle 19th century, but the more achieved gallery is opened in 1898 under the supervision of Ernest Theodor Ami. In the Anthropological Gallery, open to visitor, a teeny in the Anthropological Laboratory, a teeny anthropological gallery goes all the way around the balcony on the first floor, as you can guess. The anthropological collection, the skeletons and the skulls were already devoted to explain the fossil and current races. They were organized through a geographic order. It was not the case before. And the three main categories for current races was already black, yellow, and white, according to the Cuvier proposal. Then all the anthropological collections sitting up at the Museum of Men come from the Anthropological Laboratory of the National Museum of Natural History and from this gallery. In fact, the creation of the Museum of Men fulfills the project to put together in one single museum the cultural and the natural aspects of humanity. And thus, all the anthropological collection was transferred to the Museum of Men. Paul Rivet spoke of an army of skeletons arriving at his museum. And indeed, all the skulls and the skeletons displayed in the Human Races Gallery of the Museum of Men come from there. And it is also the case for several photographs, and maybe, in fact, for all, but I don't have yet identified all the provenances. It's in progress. But it's true for several ones. Some portraits came from the Roland Bonaparte collections, which was kept at the Anthropological Laboratory. And here, another example about portraits used to illustrate the Melanesian race. The side and front portrait on the left was taken by Désiré Charnay in 1878. And on the one hand, the same front portrait appears on an album, The Ace of the Anthropological Laboratory, and also on the other hand, on a cardboard of the Museum of Men. And we can get that the picture from the Anthropological Laboratory was duplicated to integrate the Museum of Men collections and again reproduced to be displayed in the gallery. And I show two other examples briefly. I'm not sure that the William Talbitzer photographs on the top were previously kept at the Anthropological Library, but it's according to the date it's possible. And it is a little bit sugar for another example, Types Portraits by Valdemar Jackelson, taken during the Jesuits North Pacific expedition led by Franz Boas at the turn of the century. The negatives came from the Anthropological Laboratory of the Museum of Natural History. Obviously, as the view of the Ami Gallery suggests, photographs didn't occupy a large place there. However, they were not totally omitted. According to contemporary descriptions, some photographic prints and paintings were hanging on unavailable space, like, for instance, the stairs. But more importantly, photographic portraits were displayed on 4 rotary filling cabinets on the balcony. We can guess 2 of them on the background of this picture, and there are several large white cupboards seem to present portraits to visitors, and maybe the same than those thereafter displayed at the Museum of Man. Besides, this gallery also displayed busts and plaster cats. They are all transferred at the Museum of Man with the anthropological collections, but only one of them finds its place in the Human Races Gallery, the one of Sarah G. Batman, known as the Venus Hottentot. The other were all relegated in the storage facilities, and this is the result of a museographical From a museographic point of view, there are indeed great shifts from the 19th century gallery to the one of the Museum of Man. Historical photographs allows us to have an idea of it. The skulls still are the main elements, the base of the demonstration. They are placed in the front of the showcases, and we know that discrete bikings have even been designed to be used in the gallery. But photographs are now the main element surrounding them. This is very coherent, with a place more largely devoted to photography within the museum. It is present in all the rooms where it plays a leading didactic role. In the Human Races Gallery, photograph was certainly a way to make the scientific and quite austere discourse of skulls more pleasant and digest. And as it was probably much more common for visitors to look at photographs rather than compare skulls, these pictures appear as a real support of the discourse. Thus, through the scenography, one photograph often corresponds to one skull, and this presentation creates an extension effect between the skull and the photograph. The visitor was invited to conceive a virtual link between them, as if the skull, in a way, would have been the one of the depicted person. By the display, each photographed person appeared to be representing her or his own race. Thus, the photographed person visually embodied a racial type. This way to employ photographs to make visible and readable the races through single portraits is directly in line with the visual rhetoric widely used during the 19th century anthropology, as we saw, and largely studied for some decades, and largely criticized too. We do not have archives, correspondence, or something to know whether at the time to the creation of the gallery, this design and this setting up have been objects of reflections or debates. But it appears that the chosen visual options were ambiguous, even contradictory regarding, at the time, both the purpose of the gallery to demonstrate the non-fixity of current races, and also regarding one new way to work with photographs in physical anthropology. In the revealed conception at the time, inspired by Franz Boas, each race is defined through characteristics which are not reducible to one individual. The races have a fluid dimension. They are thought as a cluster of variable criteria. It is a reason why to study human differences, a part of anthropologists, when they use photographs, do not work with isolated pictures anymore, but with series, it allows a statistical approach of human variability. Camille Joseph stressed very well the fact that at this time, type portraits were not called into question in themselves. The question rather focused on the way to use them in scientific discourses and to build scientific demonstration with them. But in the Human Races Gallery, no specific precautions have been taken in the way of exposing portraits in a way. Paul Lester, the designer of the gallery, seems to have succumbed to the ease of the common shortcut, to which they invite portraits with eyes often looking to visitors, certainly appears to be able to embody humanity through their affective and attractive power. And so, in the Human Races Gallery, there seems to be a contradiction between what we want to say about race's scientific approach and the way in which we show it. And it appears that is due to an unthinking of what images do, what images suggest, depending on how they are presented to the public. And this unthought has proved to be tenacious at the Museum of Men. The gallery indeed remained the same, open to the public until the 70s. Thank you very much for your attention.